The position of Pullman Porter was one of honor and prestige in the black community. Not only did being a Pullman Porter provide thousands of black men with a steady income, it afforded them the opportunity to travel across the United States. These two factors will immensely change the economic landscape of the black community. The man whose innovations turned the sleeper car industry into a lucrative one was George Pullman. In 1867, his luxury sleeper cars employed the Pullman Porters and was the reason that porters were all referred to as George and never by their actual names. Pullman hired former slaves because he surmised that former slaves would make excellent servants, and he knew that they would work for meager wages. Pullman was the largest employer of black people at the time, so much so he started his own company town, Pullman, Chicago, where most of his employees lived on the south side of Chicago, not to help his employees, but so that he could get a 6% return on interest on his investment because he rented the apartments to his employees. Each Pullman car was staffed by a porter. The job of a porter was to shine shoes, fold clothes, mail letters, clean bathrooms, and the most important part of a porter's job was to prep the sleeper car for the next run. Porters had to provide their own uniforms, shoe polish, and pay for their own meals. Porters were not paid at all for morning hours. So if they worked the shift from 9 to 6 p.m., they did not start getting paid to noon. Porters were also expected to show up early to prep the trains for departure, and this time was unpaid as well. The wage for a Pullman porter was not livable, about $7,500 a year according to today's standards. The Pullman porter earned his money in tips. Despite the hardships, Pullman porters aided in changing the entire existence of the black population by helping to establish the black middle class. The only other job that provided long-term stability for blacks at the time was the post office. These former slaves were first-generation black professionals that fathered first-generation college students whose education was paid for by meager wages, tips, hard work, and the sacrifice of their Pullman porter fathers. Porters also aided in the Great Migration by taking newspapers like the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender down south so that Southern blacks could get a glimpse of what it was like to live up north. Porters were subject not only to physical and verbal abuse from passengers, they suffered at the hands of management as well. After several attempts to organize, A. Philip Randolph and Milton P. Webster, who himself was a former porter for 20 years and was fired by the Pullman Porter organization for trying to start a union, finally founded the Brotherhood of Sleeper Car Porters in 1925. This marked the first time a black organization forced a powerful company to negotiate. This also laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement. Black people learned how to organize, negotiate, but mostly and most importantly, we learned how to move as a solid unit to obtain a greater goal.